My story really starts in April of 2018, and I had a job that was pretty physical, and I started to notice that my muscles were feeling a little tight, especially in my shoulders. I was pretty sore all the time, but I just always kind of thought it was just because my job was so physical. I didn't really worry about it too much. And over time, it just kind of continued to get worse and worse. And I reached the point where I thought I should probably go to the doctor, but I just kept pushing it off, mostly because I knew that something was probably wrong, and I didn't necessarily want to know what the answer was. So I just continued to push it off until I got to the point where I had lost really most flexibility in all of my body. I wasn't able to put my socks on in the morning. I wasn't able to really get ready in the morning even. And my muscles were just sore all of the time. I noticed that I wasn't nearly as strong as what I was at one point, and just doing even the most basic tasks were really causing me some issues. So I finally scheduled an appointment and went to my local doctor, and she was really great. She immediately took some blood tests and said as soon as we get him back, we'll call you and let you know. I had a family vacation the next day, and we were going from Oskaloosa, Iowa, down to Branson, Missouri. And on the way down, I got a call from the doctor. And I had kind of done some research on Google myself and really thought that I had the autoimmune disease of lupus. And she called me and she told me it wasn't that, but she did say that there was some really serious issues with my blood and that I had the blood of a 90-year-old man. And she said, as soon as I get back from vacation, I need to go to the emergency room at the University of Iowa hospitals so that I can get an appointment there. And whenever I found out that I didn't have lupus, as silly as it seems, I was actually really upset and really sad, just because that was an answer. That was I could start to get better. I could figure out what kind of medicine I needed to be on and could start to get better from there. And so when we finally got to Branson, I actually went and just got into bed and I just cried because I was scared. I didn't know what was going on. And when I was laying in bed, I just remember praying to God and just saying, please just fix this. Whatever is wrong with me, please just fix it. Just make it better. And I just wanted to get out of bed and just have everything be better. And unfortunately, that didn't happen. And when while we were on that weeks-long vacation, my health deteriorated even more than what it had the previous months. I got to the point where I could no longer get out of bed by myself. I could no longer get out of a chair by myself. I could virtually do nothing by myself. I had to have help in doing anything and everything, even getting in and out of the car. So when we got back from that vacation, we knew that it was pretty serious, and I started to run a pretty high temperature. And so we decided that we would go that night and we would travel up to Iowa City. So we made the hour-and-a-half long road trip up there. We actually got into the emergency room right away, and that night I saw 6 different doctors, and every one of them came in and they would kind of poke and prod and they would take different blood tests, and it was a really hard night, but it was comforting because Delaney was there with me, and so just to have somebody there in the room with me that whenever I would get scared or freaked out or whatever, I could grab her hand and she could give me that comfort. About 3 hours into my stay in the emergency room, the doctors came in and they had already figured out what was wrong. They told me that I had an autoimmune disease called dermatomyositis. Basically what that is it's when your immune system attacks your muscles and it attacks your skin. And so a lot of things immediately made sense. Couldn't get out of bed anymore, couldn't do a lot of things because my muscles were deteriorating from my immune system attacking it. I had formed a pretty good rash on my face and on my chest, and so a lot of things started to make sense. So in my head I thought, okay, great. I'll get on some medicine and I'll be good to go in a couple weeks. The doctors quickly informed me that that's not how this was going to go. And so I got admitted to the hospital that night. They immediately started me on different kinds of medication to try to get my body back into shape and back to where it needed to be. After about a week-long stay there, I started to improve. A lot of the blood tests that they were taking, things were getting better, and so they sent me home. When I got home, I quickly realized that this was going to be a really, really long road to recovery. I had to have somebody with me 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I could not do anything. And if you want to talk about being frustrated, those are the most frustrating days of my life. If I needed to go to the bathroom, somebody had to help me up out of the chair. If I wanted food, somebody had to make it for me. I depended on other people for virtually everything. And again, I just found myself just really saying, God, please just fix this. Just fix this. I want to wake up tomorrow and just be able to get out of bed. While I was at home for the next 2 months, I felt pretty positive about it. I felt like things were going well. I felt like I was getting better. And I had a checkup with the doctor to make sure that everything was on track. And so we traveled back up to Iowa City. When I went into the doctor's appointment, I felt pretty optimistic. She asked me how I was doing, and I said I was doing well, and I felt like things were getting better. And we went through several different tests, including they took my blood and ran some blood tests again. I was there for about 45 minutes that day, and at the end of my appointment, the doctor told me that I actually wasn't doing any better. My blood tests were actually worse than what they were whenever I first came into the hospital, and all the physical tests that I had done, I was worse on everything. And that was really a hard blow. Here I was thinking, things are getting better, I'm doing better, and to find out that was really just all in my head. I wasn't better at all. In fact, I was actually worse. So I got admitted to the hospital for a second time, and this time they said they wanted to start me on an infusion, and they told me that these infusions are what they use for a lot of different people that have dermatomyositis, and a lot of times it works. I will never forget when they started the infusions on me, because I really felt like this was probably one of the last chances that I had to get better. We had asked the doctors plenty of times if I was going to recover from this, and they never gave us a straight answer. They could not tell me that I was ever going to be back to normal. They couldn't tell me that I was going to even live out this disease. And so I remember laying in bed and looking over at the infusion that was getting ready to go inside my veins and seeing it slowly drip out of the bottle into the tube and go down into my vein. And I just laid there and I just prayed to God. And I just asked him over and over to please help this work. Let this be the thing that makes me get better. And I kind of realized in that moment that this was so far out of my hands. I am a major control freak in every aspect of my life, and I always have been. And this is one thing that I wasn't going to be able to control it. I wasn't going to be able to do this alone. I wasn't going to be able to just do whatever the doctor said and get better. I needed God. I needed God in that place. I needed God to heal me, and I needed to give God the control of the situation. The infusion lasted about 4 hours, and immediately afterwards, I actually did feel better. I could walk easier. I could do things physically easier. I wasn't as sore as what I was before. And so then it was just kind of a waiting game to just see what happens. The doctors came in the next day, and they were extremely happy because they ran another blood test, and all of my levels were getting very, very close to being in the normal range, being where they should be. And so after a week's stay, I left the hospital again, And I felt extremely optimistic about what was happening. And I just learned, like, I gotta be patient with this. I gotta take my time with this. I gotta still follow what the doctor says, but I gotta really I gotta really count on God, and I gotta give God the control. When I went home after the second time in the hospital, I spent a lot of time kind of reflecting on my life, reflecting on my relationship with God, and I realized that I didn't really have a relationship with God, to be honest. I didn't read the Bible ever. I never really prayed unless I needed something. I was just kind of doing things on my own. I went to church when it was convenient for me. And the first night I came back, and Delaney and I were sitting there and we were talking, and I told her, I said, if I get better, if I heal from this, it is by the grace of God alone, and I've got to get my life on track. I've got to get right with God. And so I spent a lot of those times whenever I couldn't do anything, I couldn't get up and go to work. I just had to sit in a chair basically and watch TV all day. And I spent a lot of that time praying to God and asking God to heal me, but also asking God to help me to be able to have a better relationship with Him and to continue to have good communication with Him. So 2 months went by. I felt like things were going all right. And then I all of a sudden hit kind of a nosedive. And I could tell that I was regressing quickly. There would be things that I could do the day before, and I'd wake up and I wouldn't be able to do them anymore. And so my family and I decided that I needed to go back to the hospital, and that was really, really hard. Kind of to have to just accept that, what I'm doing isn't working. This infusion worked for a while, and it wore off, and it's not working anymore, and I'm really still not getting any better. So we traveled back up to Iowa City. We went back into the emergency room again, and we saw the doctors again. This time things were actually quite a bit better. The doctor came in the next day after I had gone up there, and she told me that they had run some blood tests, and that my blood tests were coming back even better than what they had ever before. And she said that they were going to adjust some of my medication, and that they thought everything would be all right. One of the concerns that the doctors had was that cancer a lot of times is tied in with dermatomyositis. A lot of times people get the disease because they have cancer. And so the doctors were concerned that might be part of the problem of why I wasn't progressing and getting better as fast as what they would like me to. And so they ran a ton of tests, and everything came back fine. I did not have cancer. And so that was a really happy time, and that was a time that we were definitely really thankful for God to give me that much. After I was in the hospital for another 2 weeks, on the third time, I went home and I felt better than what I had in a long time. They had adjusted my medication, and so we went back home and I continued to do physical therapy, and honestly, things just kind of started to get better. My life with God was better, and my physical life was getting better. I would wake up and be able to just do things that I couldn't do the day before. I spent a lot of time not being able to go upstairs by myself. I had to have somebody carry me, and one day I could just automatically start doing stairs by myself. And so things progressed, and I got better really just as quick as I had gotten worse. And so I definitely felt good about that. I felt positive about that. I still wasn't at 100%. And I spent a lot of time in reflection. And after the third time when I came back from the hospital, I really started to think about all the people that had been praying for me. We had got countless cards from people just in the community, people that I knew that said that they were praying for me. I got cards from people from across the state of Iowa that said, hey, my church found out what's going on with you. We're praying for you. I had a friend out in Colorado that was at a church, and she let me know one night that somebody else in her small group brought me up to her small group in her church in Colorado to pray for me. And the people in Nicaragua praying for me every day. And those prayers really comforted me a lot during those times. We had people make us meals 3 nights a week for months, and those really took such a burden off of us. And we had people come and build a ramp at our house. And it might not seem like a big deal, but that ramp was such a big deal to me. Because before we had the ramp and I couldn't do stairs, it was such a hassle to go out and do anything. And so I spent all day and all night inside on the chair doing nothing. And that becomes depressing, and that becomes really hard really quick. And so those people building that ramp really gave me a lot of freedom and let me be able to go outside so much easier. So I guess now as I sit here and I kind of think back over that year's worth of getting sick and then gradually getting better, I think the 2 things that I can say is, number 1, that God is always in control. And no matter what situation you're in, you got to give it to Him, and you got to give Him the control. And no matter how bad you control everything else in your life, there are situations that aren't in your control regardless of what you do. And I think the second thing that I could say is that God is good all the time, and all the time, God is good.